Hello everyone, welcome back to the third tutorial part of Django web tutorial series. In this part I will cover a modal, its declaration and some main field types. Also, I'll briefly show you a few main ways to access modal data. Before continuing, please subscribe my channel, like it, and I hope so, this should help me to grow it. Thank you. As you can see, I already copied my second tutorial, and this is actually the end of it. And I made the copy, renamed it, and I'm continuing it. So, Django Web Applications access and processes data through Python objects called modals. The modals define the structure of the stored data, including field types and their default values, maximum size, selection list options, help text for documentation, label text for forms, and etc. The definition of the modal does not depend on the main database. You can choose one of the several as part of the project settings. Once you decide which database to use, you don't need to talk to it directly at all. You write the structure and other code to your modal, and Django does all the dirty work with you to communicate with the database. Before you start coding your modals, it's worth taking a few minutes to think about what data we need to store and what relationships between different objects we'll use. For simplistic reasons, I created topics about animals, and I choose to use cats, dogs, and etc. The best is to draw what your tables will look like. So I quickly drew one, but it's a fundamental one. So take a look at this. Django allows us later to expand these models quickly, but still it would be best to have a bright view of how it should look. It makes sense to have separate models for each object when creating modals. The apparent objects are article, article series, and authors in my example. So you might also want to use modals to provide a selection list of options, such as drop-down list of choices, instead of hard coding the choices on the site itself, which is recommended when all options are not known in advance or might change later. So when deciding on our modals and fields, we need to think about relationships. As in many databases, Django allows you to define one-to-one relationship, one-to-many, and many-to-many, as all the databases do. So let's start the coding, not to go deep into the theory and so on. The first model to start with is the article model, since articles, or we can also call tutorials, are the main aspect of PyLessons.com website. So what might some attributes of an article be? So obviously we got the title, subtitle, slug, maybe publication date, and the content like the write-up itself. These are the crucial parts and should be enough to start with. Also, we might come with more things for articles, such as maybe that series they are part of, the category it falls under, and so on. So while using Django, adding more fields to your database requires minimal effort, so it doesn't matter as much as you think ahead. So let's create a tutorial model. Each model will be a unique class in the model.py file. So I open my application, and here is the models.py, and let's start by defining the model for your tutorial or article, that's it. So first, I know that I'll use a time zone sometimes, so from Django I'll import utils import time zone. Okay, I'll use it. So I define my first class that I will call article, and it will inherit from modals.modal, of course, and this will be in the most cases. So first will be the title, and this is the modals.char field, and I choose to have a max length of it as 200. We can choose whatever we want. Next will be subtitle, and it will be also the modals and char field. Here max field will be max length, will be 200. Default will be just nothing, and blank is allowed as true. Next, we can choose article slug. What will be the slug? So here is our models, and there is a specific field for this slug field called, and I have given some documentation. I'll call it series slug. I mean, it should be article slug, sorry, it's not a series. Article slug, of course, we will not allow it to be as null here. We call it false, and blank is equal also to false, and unique, we want it to be unique. Of course, that's true, because one slug is for one page. So next will be our content, and it will be simply as models text field. Sorry, not this one. Content. And now I need to know when it was published. So it should be daytime, and another will be modified, also equal to same. So I'll write at both of these lines models.date time field. Here will be some documentation, blah blah blah, and default will be equal to our time zone now, as I said before. So here I'll published, and here I'll call it as modified. That's right. Here, explaining all models will inherit from the models.model. We then define our fields. Keep in mind that a model can have an arbitrary number of fields defined in different ways of any type, each of which is a column of data what we want to store in one of the tables in our database. Each database record consists of each field value. These fields correspond to our data format in the actual database. We expect our title and subtitle to be pretty short, so we define this as char field. You might be wondering the difference between the char field we use the name and the text field we use for the content itself. We typically use char fields for someone with limited size and a text field when we don't want to limit it. So text, we want to have a URL to our article that will define with a slug field. A slug field is a short label that contains numbers, letters, underscores, or hyphens. They are generally used in URLs. I'll create another one. I'll define a slug, and I'll do it as self, and here we'll return self.article slug for now. And you might ask why I'm using this, and I'll add a property here instead, and having a single slug in the main model. I'll answer this question in the 6th tutorial, where we'll create a basic website template, and we'll come to this later. And also we want to know when our article was created or modified. This information we'll be able to record by having a datetime field. So more about this you can find in, of course, in Django documentation. So finally, I need to add an override string that we call a define string, and sorry, I made a mistake, sorry. And here is also self, and when we call this, I want to return solve.title simply. That's a special method to make it a bit more readable when displayed in a string form, which we'll see, of course, later. Also, as I mentioned, we want that our article could have some category or series. So I'll create one now with a similar field. So here I come ahead and I define a class that article series, and here will be model.model like that. And of course it will have title and subtitle. So for now I'll just copy these, title and subtitle. It will be the same. That's good. Okay, now I copy the slug field like that. This will be a serious slug right now, and it will be null, false, and unique. That's true. And I need a published. Usually we are not modifying because it will not handle any content. It will simply hold all our articles, so I don't need modified date. I need only published date. So I'll have the same date published, and yeah, I think that's enough. So every time your models change, you have to make a migration. Oh, sorry, I forgot one more. There is a class. I'll come to and I return a verbose name plural equal to series. Okay, I hope I didn't make any mistakes. Okay, I forgot to add one more line here to make a relationship between two of these. So yeah, I created this article series, but I need to have some relationship between them. So I need to create a series that is equal to models, and here we create a foreign key, and here we write article series that default is nothing, simply empty. Verbose name, it will be series, and the last one is on delete. We want to model set default dot set default. So when we delete, the series will be default as none. So every time your models change, you have to make migration. Here are two steps. First, we carry out make migrations, and then we carry out the actual migration. We use the manage.py script to do this. So let's do this. Python manage.py make migrations. And you can see that my article series and article were not created. So this action generates the code needed for the migration, does not apply the changes yet. You can view all your migration by visiting the apps migrations directory here, and this file was created. If you're curious, now let's you need to be advanced in Django if you want to modify it by yourself. You need to understand what you're doing. So now let's apply the migrations. So let's open this and we'll call it migrate. So as you can see, everything is fine. We migrated and my migrations were applied. So there are many different types of fields, including fields for different types of numbers, floats, small integers, big integers, booleans, serial, unique IDs, and other time-related information, for example, the duration, time, etc. You can view all of this in Django official documentation. So moving further, here is your model level metadata that can be declared by creating a new meta class inside. As you can see, there was meta. That's a mistake. So it should be meta. And now I can create the ordering also here. Ordering is equal to published. And I'll add the same stuff in this field. Here will be this article and ordering also by published. That's cool. That's enough for me, at least for now. One of the most valuable features of this metadata is managing the default order of records returned when you query a model. So as shown, you do this by specifying the match order in a list of field names to the ordering attribute. Results order will depend on the field type. To change the results sorting order, you can prefix the field name with a minus sign, as you see. For example, if you choose to sort by title and date, we type the ordering by adding here a title and then publish date. Items would be sorted alphabetically by title from A to Z, and then by publication date in each title from newest to oldest. Well, that's cool, isn't it? So another common attribute is Django is verbose name. The verbose name for this class is the singular and plural from verbose name plural article. So actually this helps for me when I'm viewing this in my admin panel. We'll see. So another valuable attribute allows you to create and apply new access permissions to the model. That will enable you to sort by another field or declare an abstract class. That's a base class for which you cannot create records, and instead will be derived to create other models. So many other metadata options control what database must be used for the model and how the data is stored. Well, these are only useful if you need to map a model to an existing database. Well, you can find a complete list of metadata options on the Django documentation. Of course, if you're interested, I'll add this to my text version tutorial. So I'll leave it as it is right now. And I haven't talked about methods. So a model can also have methods. It's recommended that every model should have defined the standard Python class method string to return a human readable string for each object. This string represents an individual records in the administration side. Often this will return a title or name field from the models, as I wrote it right now. This information also is possible to find in Django documentation, as everything what I talk here. Right now we created a record, so let's test this out. So let's create an article record. If you made any changes to model metadata or methods, you need to make migrations again to do this and move on. So let's check if there's any changes. No records found, and so everything's cool. I know that this is a lot of stuff to remember, but the last thing to do is add an article record or article series record. One of the quickest ways is through the shell. So later we'll do it from the admin panel or with the particular form we'll create. You may guess, we do this again with manage.py. So let's write of course Python manage.py, and we'll call a shell. That's cool. And this gives us an easy and quick way to interact with our website without writing up some view and controller to test something. My primary use is to do something like test a query like filter or get. We can quickly interact via the shell rather than print it out, logging or displaying the data in a view. When we have a lot of related models, writing code to do what we want doesn't necessarily work out the first time. So I'm preferring my website in a debugger mode where I can feel more comfortable testing things, but let's see a quick example. Let's import our article and article series for now. So I do from main.models import article and article series. It's cool, it worked. And now we can try to create a new series. So new series will be equal to article series, and title will be dogs. Okay, dogs. Then subtitle will be equal. It's all about dogs. It will not work here because I have additional. So I need to fix these. That's the minus of doing this without terminal. And there's a slug, and of course we'll call it simply dogs. That's cool. And there's no errors. So right now we created this new series record. Let's see. Article series object none. Okay. So now let's save it. New series, and let's write save. Hopefully this should be saved right now in our database. Now we can loop through our model to see what records we have. So call article series, and we write objects and all. Boom. As you can see, we have one article series. So if we would have more, then we would need to have some kind of loop to print it out. So let's print everything we have here to just to look at it. So I'll write a.title, and at the beginning I need to write for a in article series. It's cool. So as you can see, we have article series dogs right now in our database. We can see that a new record was inserted into the database. Cool, isn't it? That's damn easy, and yeah, I'll publish this, of course. However, things might become way more complex when we have many more objects, so I would recommend using the shell to insert data. Can you imagine writing entire articles or CS via the shell? Instead, we are more likely to use the admin page for that, which we'll discuss in the future tutorial. And I think that's it for now. It took some time to complete this and walk through this in details. So this tutorial taught us how to define the models and use this information to create and implement appropriate models for the basic Django website. For now, we'll briefly deviate from creating the main app and the site. Nowadays, there are no websites where we would have any user information. So our next tutorial goal will be to cover the best way to create users so that we would be flexible with it in the future. So, as always, like my channel, subscribe, comment if you have any questions. I definitely try to help you, and thank you for watching. I hope to grow fast. So, see you in our next tutorial. Bye.